Greetings. I'd like to talk to you today about risk assessment when it comes to vaccines, which of course is extremely topical just at the moment. Now, there's a sort of buzz going around that somehow, if you're slightly uncomfortable about the birth of this potential new vaccine we're getting for coronavirus, you're somehow anti-vax. Now, that's absurd. I am in no way anti-vax. I'm a baby boomer and I was saved from polio, which is a crippling, horrible, ghastly disease. I had the jab when I was a nipper. My parents quite rightly gave me that. Other people had it, generally speaking, en masse in the early 1950s. There were other things that killed wee babies and youngsters in the early 1950s. There was scarlet fever, diphtheria and various other things. So it was a good idea to have that jab, and I was happy to have it, and my parents were happy to have it, and I saw firsthand the appalling devastation wreaked by polio. And I have been, in my youth, visited places like darkest Africa and the Indian subcontinent, and I have had the necessary jabs there. And the reason I've had the necessary jabs is because the diseases that you're exposed to in some of those parts of the world have a very low recovery rate. You don't bounce back from them. They will kill you very often, as indeed will tetanus. So, for example, in our small holding, if I badly cut a hand on a rusty fence or something like that, my wife and I will go and have a boost to anti-tetanus jab, which is quite natural and quite proper, and that's as it should be. So let's get away from this nonsense that anybody is anti-vax. Most people aren't anti-vax, but they treat it with a certain amount of discretion. Now, let me just explain why am I talking about vaccine. I'm not a medic, I'm not a scientist, but I am an assessor of risk. And I spent 40 years professionally in the business of pensions and life assurance. And I finished my last major appointment in the City of London was the Chief Executive Officer of a life assurance company. So I know something about risk. And life risk and mortality statistics have all been bundled up part and parcel of my professional life, and I've lived through a lot. I've seen the sort of major assault on things like dairy products. I've lived through the AIDS scare. I've lived through all sorts of other scares. I've even lived through, when I was a very young man, the Hong Kong flu in 1968, which incidentally was a lot worse than this one. So I've seen quite a lot, and I've seen quite a lot from a professional point of view. Now, what we need to do is we need to look at the risk assessment. The risk assessment. You make a risk assessment. Let's just look at what a risk assessment is. You make risk assessments every day. You make them with your investments. You take over, if you're out in the car and you overtake another car or a lorry on the road, you make an assessment. You make a risk assessment. You have a look, you see the road is clear, and you decide to go. Fair enough. That's a risk assessment. So risk assessment is something that we're doing every single day. Now, the point is here, it's important that you continue to make the risk assessment yourself. You must make these risk assessments yourself. Nobody can make them for you. Not a politician, not a scientist, nobody else can do this for you, and make no mistake. The only scientists or medics you are being exposed to on mainstream media at the moment are those who toe the government line. There's a mass of scientific opinion which doesn't toe the line and believes that lots of other things like lockdown don't work and vaccines probably won't come along, or they won't come along in time, and if they do, they're going to be relatively less reliable than one might imagine. So there are all these things. There is an alternative view to the science, and what I've done on my website is I've given access to independent international scientific opinion for you to make your own assessment, because nobody else can make this for you. You and your family. You must make it for yourself. Don't listen to anybody. Do the research. Now, I'm not advocating whether you have a jab or not, or any jab, whether it's this one coming up perhaps for COVID or not. But the point is, the retiring vice president of Pfizer, which is one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies on the planet, has told us, has he not, that pharmaceutical companies would expect to take 8 to 10 years to develop a vaccine. So if something has been put together in under 12 months, one has to accept that the risk level would be higher than normal. I'm not saying don't have it. What I'm saying is make that part of your risk assessment. And I think that's an important factor. And we know that some vaccinations have side effects. It doesn't matter whether it's for ordinary flu or whatever else it is, you get side effects. And that's something you have to look at and be careful about. We also know, do we not, from the Public Health National Health Office, that the recovery rate for COVID-19 in the fit and healthy is bordering on sort of 99% plus for most of us, and more if you're particularly fit and healthy and under 70. So again, part of that risk assessment is, would I have a vaccine? Would I take a vaccine? Would I do that for something which has such a very, very high recovery rate? Does it make sense? And that should be part of your procedure. The other thing I'd like to see, because don't forget you're going to be under enormous pressure to take this vaccine. Government already talking about inducements, and when they talk about inducements, they're implying that you can't travel, you won't get your passport renewed, you won't be able to go into theatres, pubs, or all the rest of it unless you have the jab. I'm not certain they're going to hold you down and drill the jab into you, but that's the kind of way it's going. And I did a debate with Andrew Bridgen, Conservative MP, the other day, and this is the kind of way it's going, and he pretty well admitted as such. Matt Hancock has not taken off the table the fact that it might be mandatory. He'd been pressed by Julia Hartley-Brewer. Is it possible that this could be mandatory? And he wouldn't answer. Instead of going, my God, this is England, of course it won't be mandatory. What an appalling idea. He didn't do that. So we need to be very well prepared indeed, because there's going to be enormous pressure. One of the things I'd particularly like to see about this vaccine, when it comes, if it comes, and it may not come, we don't know, but if it comes, I'd like to know what's in it. Now, here's a packet of Weetabix. It is by law, and food labelling law, you have to put on the back exactly what's in it. So there's wheat, barley extract, wheat germ, salt, cocoa, all the rest of it. It's all on the back. It has to go there by law if you're going to eat Weetabix. Fair enough, don't have any issue with that. I'm very fond of Weetabix. Now, if we're going to have a jab, if somebody's going to stick a needle into us, all right? Somebody's going to stick a needle and straight into our bloodstream. I don't think it's unreasonable for them to tell us exactly what's in it. I don't want medical mumbo jumbo. I want to know what's actually in this that they're going to jab into me, so I can make a risk assessment on whether I need this because there's a very high recovery rate and my internal immune system is perfectly capable of looking after it, which is why the recovery rate's so high, because we will have a perfectly efficient immune system if we're fit and we've taken our vitamin supplements, vitamin D particularly. All this information is on my website. You can just press the buttons, and it's independent international advice. Not government sponsored or BBC nonsense. This is what you can actually look at. I want to know what's in it. I want to know, is there mercury in it? Is there aluminium in it? And so on and so forth, so I can make my risk assessment. There may not be, I don't know. But we know that there are in some of these jabs, which is why you get your side effects. Not for one moment am I saying don't have a jab. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is sit down, do your homework from independent international sources and make the decision for yourself. Don't let Boris Johnson or Matt Hancock and his ilk persuade you to do something without the right amount of information for you and your family. As most of you know, my work is very heavily independently research based. And I get my information from all over the world. It would help if you press the subscribe button and the little bell next to it, because the more subscribers I have, the more likely it is that international independent research institutes will share their material with me. It's most helpful, and then of course I automatically share it with you. So, surprise, won't cost you anything. Thank you very much.